And of course, we know that Peter Biara Jaki is chairperson of the South Sudan Young Leaders Forum. He's been, of course, bandstorming in South Sudan to just get the reality on the ground of what is happening there in South Sudan. Also, there's a latest development from IGAD. He's here to tell us more about that. Just take it away, Peter Biara Jaki, to just give us more about a sense of what is happening in South Sudan. We know IGAD also is intervening, and there's new development about sharing of power right now. Maybe you can tell us more.
Yes. So as everyone knows, the war in South Sudan has been going on for a very long time. Peace agreement that was signed in 2015 collapsed in 2016, just only a few months later, when Riek Machar fled Juba and he was hunted down until he crossed the Democratic Republic of Congo. What happened since then is that the armed activities increased again, and different parties entered conflict, and new actors came into the scene. And as a result, the peace agreement had to be revitalized. This was a decision that was made by the IGAD, and the parties had been negotiating in Addis Ababa since December 2017. Now, based on the negotiation themselves, the parties have not reached any agreement whatsoever. They have made some progress, and they made some declarations, like a certain percentage that will be given to women. But beyond that, in terms of power sharing, they have been unable to make any meaningful progress whatsoever. So what IGAD has done yesterday was to provide what it thought as a common ground. Now, just to get you through this, as we have been discussing Dibal for the last few months here, the whole concept is about power sharing. It's about dividing up the cake. This is what it has really essentially come down. So what IGAD is proposing is that the transitional government of national unity, this is Salva Kiir, Taban Dengai, and the group that is in Juba, including some of the political parties that are allied to the government, those of Martin Iliya, as a transitional government of national unity, and the parties allied to them in Juba, they will get 60% of all the cabinet positions. All right? And then it says the SPLMIO, this is the group of Riek Machar now. Riek Machar will get 25%. This is what the IGAD is proposing for them. This is for the SPLMIO here. And then you have another new entities that has emerged, a number of different smaller armed groups, including Paul Malong group that joined not so long ago. This group, they call themselves South Sudan Opposition Alliance. They're proposing to give them 10%. Then there is a group of former political detainees. This is the group of former Secretary General Pagana Mom, former Foreign Minister Denga Lor, and others. They will be getting 5%. Then there is also another group where they have another opposition entity. So essentially what this thing is, what IGAD is doing here is saying, let's divide up the cake. And based on the positioning on the ground, based on the political clout, based on the different positions and arguments that they have reached, this will be the sharing of the cake. Now, they're proposing a cabinet of 42 ministers. This is a country that is extremely poor now, where soldiers have been going for months without getting salaries, where inflation is among the highest in the world. Yet IGAD is coming here to say that the cabinet is going to be increased from the present 32 cabinet ministers by another 10 ministers to 42. They are also proposing to increase the parliament from 400. Now, our parliament was only 332 MPs. And then in the last agreement, IGAD increased it to 400. And now they are proposing to increase it to 440. They are also proposing that we have 3 vice presidents. So you have a first vice president, which will be appointed by the group of Riek Machar, the SPLMIO. You have a vice president that will be appointed by the government. And then you have a third vice president that will be appointed by a coalition of other opposition entities. So 3 vice presidents, 42 cabinet ministers, 440 MPs. This is the breakdown of the numbers of what IGAD is proposing. And this is at a time when the economy of South Sudan is extremely in tatters, where basically people have gone for months without getting their salaries, where basic products are very difficult to get. And we were talking about bodyguards before. And this is a country where if you are a minister, you are entitled a house, you are entitled a fleet, you are entitled vehicles and all sort of things. So essentially, most of our budget, the entire resources of the country, will be going to maintain these political leaders and their generals. This is the other part. There is a security arrangement where all of these guys in the bush that have declared themselves generals, and there is something of like 15 different rebel groups, and each one of them put on ranks, will be integrated into the army. So already now, as we speak, we have over 1,000 generals. It's likely that they may increase, I don't know, to, 200, we get new 200, maybe 300, I don't know. This is essentially what IGAD is proposing. So I wonder if this is actually going to bring peace, because this is the previous arrangement we had. Because the problem here is the entire country is being taken hostage by these warlords, essentially warlords, people that are using violence to hold on to political positions. And they use violence because they see state as something that they can take over to extract resources for themselves and their families, so that they reinforce their means of violence. So essentially what this will do will be basically to hold any democratic development, any civic development in South Sudan whatsoever, and place the entire country at the mercy of these armed groups who are essentially using violence as a way of holding on to position. Remember, this is a country that is now going to be 7 years old. It hasn't had an election since it became independent. The last time we had an election was 2010, and there were elections for a semi-autonomous entity.
Yes.
There was not even an election for a sovereign country. So, and those elections were supposed to expire in 2015. So we were just talking about Nkurunziza and what is going on in Burundi earlier. In South Sudan, what the parliament did, instead of doing elections, was just basically to extend their terms. And as we speak, they have introduced another bill in the parliament to extend it again. So you have some guys, so you basically have guys that have elected themselves for life and who feel that every time there is a talk of elections, they either create a war so that you have this kind of thing, and if they don't reach any agreement, they ask the same parliament to extend.
Right.
This is where we are stuck, and this is why people of South Sudan must realize that nothing is coming from Addis Ababa.
Right, thank you.
They have to handle this.
Okay, just stand on there, and maybe we can get reactions from our panelists today, especially the IGAD on this, which is under the aegis of AU, and we have the former chair here to tell us more about this development. What does it portend for security of South Sudan in light of what Dr. Peter Biara-Jack is telling us this morning? Very briefly, we've got only 5 minutes, so we'll just be brief also with and very tasked with our comments. Let's hear from you, Ambassador.
Again, this is a very complicated situation because South Sudan now risks itself really being dismembered into tribal groupings. And I think Peter can confirm that. And the unfortunate thing about South Sudan is, of course, there is a heavy dominance of the Dinka and Nuer, and I don't know whether the new arithmetic can reflect that. And that has never, we haven't built a nation. It never even took off because the first priority was to create a new state out of what was existing. And we know that there was this temporal unity with a common enemy, and once that was done, they looked at themselves. Now they are just chewing each other up. I tell you, it's a very sad situation because I know from the African Union there is a lot of effort. There are actually two former heads of state who are accompanying the IGAD process.
Yes.
Former chairperson of the commission and also former president of Botswana, who have been there to try and help that government. But nobody's listening. Sanctions have been tried. Nobody's listening. And to me, this is still, as Peter said, a way they have found out to continue the process. In the meantime, society is decaying and decaying. Refugees, you have now huge numbers of refugees. And so it's going to totally implode. And to me, if I was to suggest, South Sudan should be under either UN rule now for some time to organize fresh elections so that you can have a nation in the making.
Right. Does it mean also the African Union has actually failed in his endeavor to try and make sure we have a peaceful South Sudan?
If I could say the way African Union works,
yes,
is that there is very clear understanding that the regional body that is, primarily in that region is given the lead, and that is IGAD. African Union cannot take over until IGAD gives in.
Thank you.
And the IGAD has to request.
Thank you. There, let's hear from Lucy.
Thank you so much for that wonderful breakdown, Peter. You're amazing. I will want you to continue from the point where you said, essentially what you're implying is that familiar methods of solving problems are being used because people are familiar with them. But you're saying this is not the way. You obviously do not agree with the IGAD way. So what is your way forward? What do you propose? Because you're saying, bring it back to South Sudan. So what are you saying South Sudan therefore needs to do to break that impasse and actually dig itself out of this very deep dark hole?
That is a very excellent question.
Just a moment. Is it a question for Peter Biara?
Yes, yes, for him. Because he's made the diagnosis. I would want to hear what
if you have another question, because of staff for time, you have a question
very
for him?
quickly, 3 points. First of all, just to acknowledge the 200 children are no longer child soldiers. Very important. The second point is institutions and individuals never fail. It is only the actions that they take fail. So the AU has not failed. It is the actions that they have taken that to this date have not generated. Second point. Third point is, as I listen to this very carefully, it sounds a bit like a Game of Thrones episode, right? And so it's a bit complicated, and actually one isn't left with a sense of confidence. But I think just to acknowledge that a breakthrough is there, and it was not there yesterday, so we can acknowledge that. But the last point really, I think, is the issue related to separation of powers in different institutions. I was waiting for a formula around judicial institutions. Now, the one thing that is missing here is a sense of accountability, right? There's no conversation around ethics and anti-corruption commissions, judiciary, law enforcement agencies, all the apparatus that is required in a modern state to hold a political elite accountable for public resources. There's no conversation like that here. So one concern, that obviously stands out for us is essentially, could this just be jobs for the boys? And if we link it back to the deployment of police officers in this country, the ratio of who gets in is probably based on who has a militia.
Yeah, we start for time. Just your reaction to the question also of Lucy as well, and the comment by Irungi Houghton.
First of all, just to a quick response to Ambassador Erasmus. People of South Sudan fought for decades for this country to become a state. We sacrificed generations after generations of our people. And we did not do that so that once we gain our freedom, we will give it back to UN. So these suggestions, we keep hearing it, that South Sudan should be placed under UN or under somebody. That will never be accepted by South Sudanese, because what we wanted was to create our own state. What has happened is that our leaders have let us down. They were supposed to build on the foundation we had and actually bring our people together and forge a state. But our present government chose to do was actually sectarianism, to use ethnicity, divisions, and those kind of things, instead of building on the vision of the SPLM, of uniting South Sudanese people and making them one nation, one people. That has not been done. And what needed to be done now is South Sudanese to take that process back. It's not about power sharing. This is all about. These guys are thinking about jobs. Some guys there have been ministers since the government of South Sudan started in 2005. And they are used to this. And being in the government allow you to loot the state, to have access to resources that you use irresponsibly. And then you use also to cultivate your own patronage system. So guys have been there and they're used to this and they want to maintain it. But what we want as people of South Sudan is to realize the ideals for which we wanted to create a state. And that means that what is needed now is really what we are trying to do. In South Sudan Young Leaders Forum, we have been moving around the country talking to young people. We have been moving in Bantu, in Barghazal, in Equatoria. What we want is for youth, young people to put down the weapons and not allow themselves to be used as tools for these guys to negotiate these percentages. Because the future belongs to us. And if we put down arms, these guys are not going to fight. And this is what we need to do so that we are able to realize our country. There is a need for a new generation of South Sudanese people to take up leadership in South Sudan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter Biara Jack. And maybe we can give our closing remarks, beginning with Tom Kagwe, as we're closing, briefly.
For purposes of South Sudan,
30 seconds.
There is one Professor, Mahmoud Mamdani,
30 seconds,
has studied this problem, and the problem starts with, first we must demobilize and reintegrate the youth. I support that. But secondly, is hold elections.
Thank you. Leave it at that. Ambassador Erastus, 30 seconds.
Well, I wish Peter and the youth good luck in this process, but it's going to be a long haul.
Thank you. Erastus, not Erastus, Irungu Hiro.
The other Erastus. so very quickly, next week, Nairobi is going to be 115 years of age. It's
114, 115.
115, I think it is.
115, yes.
And there's a great article that's been was done by John Kamau over the weekend. Yes. The thing I'm struck with is how Governor Sonko has actually taken us back 100 years, in the sense that Machakos was originally supposed to be the capital seat of the country. And he, John Ainsworth and his plan to actually push the leadership to Machakos has actually been realized by Governor Sonko.
Thank you.
Just to make another point, which is that to run the affairs of the county of Nairobi from exile, if I can put it that way, given that Machakos is not part of the county, and to have nominated a deputy governor who was even further afield in exile. Really, to the team in the Nairobi County, please, we need some structure in the city.
Thank you. Lucy.
I think I just want to finish with where we've left off. Peter, thank you so much for your passion for South Sudan. I am rooting for South Sudan very heavily, because Kenya has also deeply invested, even its military in South Sudan, its people, to just make sure that you join the fold. So tuko pamoja.
All right.